questions about the future CapEx, but they are there if anybody wanted to see them, but I told them to stop.
Okay, very quickly. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Councillor Grant.
Just a question on that, on the supply chain and the linkages. I'm really interested in that. Do you see that as strategic partners, or a vertically integrated, you're using our own capital, or a linkage, or combination of all that? If that's such a big issue, which I agree it probably is.
It's a combination, actually, of all those. It is about strategic partners. It's looking at other ports that we may be able to align with. It may be other partners in the actual export sector itself. So all those are on the table. I wouldn't rule any of those out. And it's a way of perhaps looking at de-risking our own business in the short term. But it even goes as far as looking at coastal shipping, as a way of perhaps, should we be involved in that or support that?
Capital or just...
Well, potentially, it could.
Councillor Balfour.
You mentioned awareness of various risks, like large customers and risks they entail. Have you actually quantified some of those in any sense? If Warren Buffett decided Heinz Waddies could never buy vegetables and tomatoes as cheaply in Hawke's Bay as half a dozen other places in the world, and just shut the place, have you quantified the impact of that sort of thing?
Yes, we do. And in fact, there's a paper going to our Audit and Risk Committee on Friday, which absolutely values the risk in terms of loss of income and then the loss of value of the business. We're looking at all of our competitive risks, but the ones about losing major customers is definitely on that list. They are documented. We've got a spreadsheet that says that's what we think the loss of value of the port would be if we lost, for example, Heinz. That's there as a risk. So yeah, we're very much aware of it.
Councillor Dick.
The Wairoa Northern Hawke's Bay log surge in a few years' time, sort of maintaining itself at quite high volumes for 6-7 years or so. Will that be an incremental increase in the volume of logs that you're going to handle? And if it is, what are you doing to plan for that?
Spent $7.4 million on hard stand this year, which we talked about. I mean, this year we'll do 1.4 million.
1.4. Yeah.
And I think our peak log volume is planned to be 2.2 million tonnes. And a lot of that is Hawke's Bay and East Coast. The incremental volume is the local cut, which includes the north.
At peak, it seems it could be up to 2 million coming out of Wairoa. Possibly half of that, or a proportion of that, will go to Panpac, but you still get it in the end in any case.
Yeah, well, as I said, we're currently doing 1.4, and our peak projection is to do 2.2 million, so that's 800,000 incremental tonnes over the next 5 years.
Okay.
And those uplifts obviously don't include volume coming out of the lower North Island, so which we're currently doing, and we look to continue to do. And then in addition to that, that doesn't include volume coming out of the southern Taupo region as well. So I think in terms of a capacity, we're looking at more than 2.5 million tonnes of logs, perhaps in 8 to 10 years' time.
And you think you'll have sufficient on-port storage space?
Well, at present I think we do, because again there's a number of combinations that will drive that. If you look at our log yard relative to Gisborne's, they're currently doing about 2.2 million tonnes of logs. Their log area is not that dissimilar to ours, but they have more regular shipments. So at the moment our average cycle time is around 4 weeks. We're Gisborne's is basically about between 2 and 3 weeks. So they're getting vessels more regularly. That frees up that space for the stock turn. So without a lot of extra space, it does put pressure on the exporters though to ship more regularly.
Councillor Balfour.
I just have a suggestion to increase your workload. The way you present the numbers in terms of running your business, numbers of TEUs and so forth, is fine. But from the broader public perspective, what you actually represent is the best barometer of the physical economic activity of the region because of the flows in and out here. And it does seem like maybe an annual report or something that sort of took this packaged this a little differently and said, here is our read as a port on the economic vitality of the region one way or the other. These are the things that are going up, these are the things that are going down, et cetera, would be a real useful piece of analysis or insight into the workings of the regional economy. Because we often, when people who have tried to look at assessing economic development strategies and all of that, generally you're looking at data that is the entire East Coast. It never quite is much around much around here's what we produce in Hawke's Bay that gets sold outside of Hawke's Bay, or here's what we need in Hawke's Bay that needs to come in. I would assume a very, very high percentage of both of those is coming through your place. It's not coming in on trucks and what have you. Some of it must be, but so that there is you seems to me that you have the best insight of any other institution in the Bay as to what the overall economic workings of the place are. Is that?
In Councillor Bilford, in previous presentations we've made to Council periodically, we've put up the GDP of Hawke's Bay against the volumes and the earnings at the port. And when you see those models previously, that's been one of the primary drivers for us to go and seek business from outside Hawke's Bay. Because if the ships don't if we can't increase our volumes, the ships won't call, and then our local industries will suffer also. So our motivation to go outside and seek volumes from outside has been very much to make sure that we've got volumes of business coming through the port so the ships will call. The reality is that the bulk of our increased volume over the last 5 or 6 years has come from business that we have gained from outside Hawke's Bay, and that the Hawke's Bay volumes of business are static. And we can go through and articulate that in a proper sense if you want. But if you compare the results of the port against the GDP of this region, it's a pretty sorry picture.
Okay. Anything further? You've got another slide or two?
Well, there is just very quick. I'm just conscious of the time.
Sure.
And your council's time. This is the 1 to 5 year time horizon, and some of these now are basically well underway. The area, and you'll just have to excuse me, I'll just sort of stand. This was originally going to be a sealing of the log yard, but we've now actually decided to seal the whole of the log yard. The dredging in the inner harbour is actually underway, same as that. Our office and the ops centre are currently being demolished and the new building being built here. We've got a future rail upgrade that will see extending rail to allow us to do the extra trains that we need to for logs coming from outside the region. We do have currently in our 1 to 5 a new berth development and a partial sort of, or an upgrading of our main container wharf, and that's right on that 5 year sort of time horizon that the Chairman alluded to. We do have an additional warehouse programmed for completion, but again, some of the commercial drivers around that will perhaps influence that. So a lot of that currently is already substantially underway in terms of that 1 to 5 year time horizon. Beyond that, we've got the demolition, number 14 there is the demolition of the rest of number 3 wharf. We had included that hard standing up there, number 16, and then potentially looking at extending the breakwater and a small reclamation along with another reclamation here, just to provide us with some additional space. That's in the 5 to 10, and then longer term, we've got a new berth being developed in the inner harbour here, and a further extension of the breakwater and reclamation here, and just the sequencing those would be dependent on volumes and other trade drivers. So the port in 50 years, along with off-port storage in Ahuriri and at Whakatū. So both of those are in the future planning. That's very quickly, but there is a process of it's how to get to that point.
Well, it is morning tea time. I'm sure there's another couple of questions. Councillor Scott?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. The future expansion and development of the CapEx in the port, you did refer to the point at which you needed to consider another berth, and this has been on the agenda and off the agenda for a number of years. One of the alternatives you looked at was angling that berth in terms of wave pattern. I know it raised a lot of challenges. Is that still on the agenda?
It's in the 10 to 50.
Yeah.
And that would go hand in hand with an extension of the breakwater.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Graham.
I said one comment. Great 6 months result, mate.
Thank you.
Well done. Okay. No other questions? Councillor Barker.
Thank you for that. That's a very good presentation. I really welcome it. But what we're looking at here is a port company focusing on being a port. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what they generally do. But a lot of businesses today are diversifying. New Zealand Post had not have got into the courier business and got into other businesses, would be stranded today. It's a one-trick pony. Whilst it had a lot of good tricks for decades, other things happen. So what I'm interested in hearing from the directors of the port, what plans does the port company have to diversify and strengthen its asset base to help strengthen the asset for the people of Hawke's Bay? Because as you've noted, there are risks, and if we're solely dependent on the port and then something catastrophic happens in China or whatever, then we have, as Garth's fabulous statement, have this a stranded asset. I've used to call them sort of redundant assets, but I've got a new phrase now, so thank you for that, Garth. But I do think you, as the leadership of the port, owe it to us to be thinking strategically about what it can be doing in the future. Do you have those ideas and plans?
Through you, Chair, yes, and we alluded to those in a couple of those bullet points on Garth's slide, but at the moment the things that we're talking about are commercially sensitive, and I can't go further with them here other than to assure you that the sort of things that you are raising are certainly in the board's mind.
Thank you. I feel reassured. I look forward to hearing the plans in the future. Bring them on.
Someone happy to move we accept this report? Thank you, Councillor Graham. We have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Barker. You wish to speak further? Other speakers? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you, and thank you, gentlemen. Join us for a cup of tea. We'll be 10-minute break, please.
We have copies of the press release, which is embargoed till this afternoon to the council.
Okay, to the councillors. Okay. We'll seeing we're going so well with the presentations, we'll kick off at 1:45 with Deloitte, and then we'll get back to the meeting, the general meeting after that.